Jewish believer, the 19th of April, 2025. Are you not a believer? The servant asked. I am a believer, the man replied with a smile on his face. It is always the same conundrum with the court proceedings. Even if a person had committed the most heinous crime, he is to be asked the single most misinterpreted question of all time. Even if someone was not a believer, they would say they are in order to escape punishment. The servant then asked, What is that you believe? The man replied, I believe that there is a God who created heaven and earth. The servant interrupted, Not only heaven and earth, but the whole cosmos. The man said, True. He created humans, and he created animals, and he created everything. The servant then said, He also created angels, and demons, and devils. The man said, We cannot see them though. It is like what all the other generations before us said. They believed in different. Then the man was unable to continue the sentence and he started choking. The servant replied, There are no other gods but God. So after saying that, the man stopped choking and gasped for air harshly. It is very difficult to watch certain proceedings and certain events that happen in the court lately. Most of those who come asking the servant questions would end up choking, out of breath, unable to speak, or even going manic. Some people would even consider that the servant had placed them under his spell. A few weeks ago, a rally went through the city, demanding that the servant declare how he does what he does to people, whether it is people whom he speaks to or people who just listen to him during the court proceedings that he holds. He calls them court proceedings, but they can be seen as a religion question and answer platform. The servant said to the man, Again, do you believe in angels? The man replied, I cannot believe in what I cannot see. The servant said, But you said you believe in God, and God says in the Bible, No one shall see me and live. The man remained silent for a minute and then responded, I do believe in angels. The servant said, Do you believe in the holy books and scriptures sent by God? The man responded, I do. The servant said, Do you believe in the prophets sent by God and the messengers who deliver God's messages to the world? The man responded, I do. The servant said, Do you believe that there is a heaven and there is a hell, and that we will all be sent to either one of those in accordance with our faith and beliefs in this life? The man responded, I do. The servant said, Do you believe in predestination and destiny? That everything that happens is something that God wanted to happen, and everything that doesn't happen is something that God did not allow? Do you believe that all of our destinies are pre-written for us, whether a child is born or killed, whether a job succeeds or fails? Do you believe in that? The man responded, To a certain degree. The servant responded, What do you mean to a certain degree? The man said, I have some questions about the notion of predestination. The servant responded, I also have questions about it, but I believe it to be the case. You can believe in something without understanding it fully. Only God understands everything fully. The man responded, Then I do believe in predestination. Then the servant turned to the note-taker and said, Anyone who believes in these things is considered a believer, and anyone who denies them is considered a disbeliever. The note-taker said, As per the teachings of Islam? The servant replied, Definitely. Then the servant looked at the man and said with a different tone of voice, What can I do for you, my fellow believer? The man said, I have a Jewish background. All my family members are Jewish. I was married to a woman who cheated on me. The servant replied, Is your wife with you today? The man replied, Yes, she is here. The servant replied, How did she cheat on you? The man responded, I would need to approach you to say it. The servant replied, You do know that the whole session is being broadcast to the other courts in the city, right? It is even scheduled on television for any citizen to watch and benefit from what is being said here. If your wife cheated on you by saying it, you've already told everyone what she did. Why would you need to approach me to say anything more about it? The man said, I have to do that because otherwise I would feel ashamed. The servant replied, It is okay, you can come close. The man approached the servant and placed his hand around his mouth and started whispering. She did it with an animal. The servant was shocked, stood up from his chair in disbelief, and started breathing heavily. Then he said, That is so disgusting. The whole room started speaking to one another and murmuring. Some of them even spoke up saying, Was it really an animal? The man became frustrated and even asked himself, How did they know? The servant spoke up and told the crowd to settle down and to stop speaking, to which everyone became silent. Then he looked at the man and said, You did not have to whisper that to me. It looks like everyone already heard it somehow. The man said, I can see that, but it doesn't matter anymore. I'm trying to get an idea of what should be done in that case. The woman in the crowd started crying and attempted to leave the courtroom, but the man said, Do not allow her to leave, shouting toward the guard and asked the guard to hold her inside the room in order to learn what to do with her. The servant said, First of all, bring the animal into the courtroom. The man had already brought the animal and tied it outside the courtroom. So he said, It is already outside. Shall I bring it in? No, the servant said. One of the guards will do that. Then a guard came through the gate with the animal and walked it down to the center of the stage and tied its leash to the podium upon which the man was standing. The man started trying to turn his face away from the animal. Then he stood in front of it instead of on the podium. The servant asked the man, Do you not know the punishment for such an act? The man replied, Why would I be punished? The servant said, You might be punished for whatever way you treated your wife, which led her to commit such an act. The man responded, I did not do anything to her. She cheated on me. The servant looked at the woman and said, Answer me one thing. Did he treat you well? The woman, sobbing, responded, He was a good husband. The servant said, Whether he was a good husband or not does not justify what you did, and you did it with an animal. Now the animal would be punished for something you decided to do. He then looked at the man and said, You should not have brought this issue here. You should have just divorced her and moved on with your life. The man said, But the servant interrupted him and said, Enough. You want justice to be served. Fine, we understand that. The servant then said to one of the assistants, This will be the time when you will read the sections of the Bible that are highlighted for you in the paper. Read everything you have in front of you. Then he looked at the woman and said, You should start apologizing to God and seeking forgiveness for what you did, if you haven't been doing that already. The assistant opened the book and started reciting verses from the Bible, from the book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus.
سبحان